So welcome to all on behalf of Ambedkar Karwan Media. Today we are going to begin a series of three presentations on understanding budget rights, policy and advocacy. This issue of economic rights, economic empowerment and economic democracy are very crucial for a community to understand. And in order to understand these issues, one must understand the context of the government in which the budgets are made and uh, formulated. Without this understanding of the government budgets, both the union and at the state level, it's very difficult to go for the advocacy of the economic rights. And in the course of 3 days, we are going to look at the budget rights, policy, and how we can advocate the economic rights of the community. We have with us Advocate Priyadarshi Telang, who has spent considerable time to understand, analyze, and advocate the budgets of our country, and he is specially trained because of his background in numbers. He's by education an engineer who worked in the public sector company in Visakhapatnam steel plant, and he was working on very different aspects of it. And having left his job, he spent more than a decade in the public life, where he was involved in developing projects, advocating issues of human rights, particularly the issues of the caste atrocities, and addressing the issues of the marginalized among the marginalized communities, like the nomadic tribes, and also uh, the issues like the economic rights. And he is a well-known figure who is now he's also now practicing law. He's lawyer, and he is going to bring to us his insights and his experience of understanding budget rights and policy and the advocacy of the economic rights. So I would like to request Priyadarshi ji to begin his presentation, and audiences can take down questions if they have regarding this presentation, and we can ask him after the presentation. So handing over to Priyadarshi. Priyadarshi.
Thank you, Mangesh. As Mangesh described, this is going to be a 3-day introductory session on understanding budget rights, policy, and advocacy. Uh, Along with me, there will be two eminent speakers who are advocating on these budget rights from NCDHR. So Bina Palikal will be joining us tomorrow uh, in order to understand the budget from policy lenses, various lenses, particularly looking at from gender lens and sort of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. Uh, on 5th, uh, Paul Diwakar will be joining from Asian Dalit Rights Forum, and he is one of the person who, from the very beginning, is talking about legislation, enactment of legislation on special component plan and tribal subplan. So we all three will be covering some of the aspects of to understand the budget rights with particularly with respect to or the policies with respect to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and sort of advocacy with respect to it, along with various departments and how far it has gone. Along with this series, we will also be sort of talking about state budgets. So the activists like us who are working in various states will be joining us to understand the state budget and also the Hello. Ramesh, am I audible? Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, there must be some technical issue. You can go on.
Yeah. So, so in the
Your
first,
screen is not there. Can you share the screen, please?
let me check. I have shared the screen.
It's not visible. Only you are visible.
Is it visible now? I have shared the
No.
screen.
Can you see the screen on your this thing? Yes. It's
Yeah.
coming. Yes, please go
Okay.
on.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry for these technical disturbances. Uh, so to in these three sessions, we will in the first session we will try to understand the basics of budget. As I said earlier, in the on tomorrow, Bina will be joining us to look at the budget from specific lenses, and then Paul will be joining from to take how to take that issues further at a level of advocacy at a national and international level. Uh, Friends, I would like to dedicate this session today to Abhay Khaka, who was along with us in order to train people, train activists from the very beginning when we started this sort of trainings across India through NCDHR, Dalit Arthik Adhikar Andolan. So I would like to remember Abhay on this occasion and to dedicate this session to him. The first and foremost question when we talk about budget is, do we really need to go through the budget? It's not our job. There is a state who raise the resources, who fund, who spend the budget on various issues, various programs. Do we really need to understand? That's the first question which usually comes up. And when we see at this question, or when we see it and try to locate how far the budget discussion is in media, or does it really cater to the entire population, or whatever the discussion media covers on the budget is very limited. It starts with the budget session, and within a day or two it fizzle out when the budget is presented, or after the speech of the budget within a day or two. It doesn't wait also on the media platforms till the enactment of the law. So the media doesn't cover the most of the aspects of the budget which are there for the entire population. And who are the stakeholders usually participating in these media discussions are business forums, uh, FICCIs, ASSOCHAMs, and so on and so forth, or some eminent scholars or academicians. Some do try to touch on the aspects of social budget or at a gender budget and so on, but they don't go into the much discussion of uh, the policies and programs for marginalized communities, neglected communities, or invisible communities. So through these efforts, or through these trainings which are being conducted by many organizations like NCDHR, Manuski, we try to focus on the aspects of the budget which are catering to the marginalized. And there, another important point is the budget is central to the governance. It's directly related to the entire population. It affects almost everybody and every sector of the economy. Uh, and they, as it affects the entire sector of the economy, it also affects the entire population. So therefore, we need to know what lies in those figures. Yes, figures are very dry, sometimes are very boring to go through those figures whenever they are presented. But if you mingle around those figures, if you spend some time around those figures, you will come to know the stories. You will come to know the programs and policies. you will come to know why the scholarships are not being given, why the funds are not being released. And when activists like me, when started engaging on the subject, and when we started working on the issues of caste atrocities and so on, when you try and study those social legislations, you will also find there are many rules which says, yes, there is a relief, there is a rehabilitation program, there is a contingency plan, there are special courts, exclusive special courts and exclusive public prosecutors. But where does that money come from? Do the courts has been established? Does the survivors get all those relief and whether they are being rehabilitated? And when we try to access or when we try to follow up with concerned authorities, sometimes the answer is we have not fund. We didn't receive the fund. So in order to understand also from social aspect, we need to understand the budget, where it flows, how the money is being transferred from state and other line departments, how it is being executed. So these are some of the questions which will try to understand. Uh, we won't go into many of the jargons, but certainly we will try to see some of the aspects which are essential or required when we go along uh, in order to explore those budget documents. How to read those documents, what are essential budget documents, that we will try to study or will try to understand in these sessions. Friends, when we talk about union budget, uh, the union budget usually is being referred as uh, annual financial statement, which according to Article 112 of the Constitution mandates the union of government to lay before both the houses uh, a statement of receipt and expenditure of the government of India. And this statement is being categorized into uh, three government accounts like consolidated account funds, public accounts, and contingency of funds. In today's session, we'll explore much on the consolidated funds, which is also known as the budget. In Constitution of India, you won't find the budget. There is an article which talks about uh, Article 112, which talks about sort of annual financial statement. So we will explore more on these consolidated funds. And in order to understand what that consolidated funds consist of, usually that is, as you've seen in earlier slide, it has been categorized into revenue budget and capital budget, which is further again divided into revenue receipt and revenue expenditure, capital receipts and capital expenditure. So we'll have a look into it and try to understand what are the key features of it, what are the keywords which needs to be understood in order to explore various budgetary documents. In order to go into those documents, we also need to know uh, what is the budget cycle. Usually this budget cycle is being divided into or categorized into four sections: formulation, enactment, implementation, and audit. uh, in the process of formulation, it starts usually with the finance department, where the finance department issue a circular in the last week of August or the first fortnight of September, which is called annual budget circular, and been given to various departments and ministries. Then uh, these ministries and department do reply into considering their programs and expenditures. Pre-budget meetings are also conducted during these times uh, in order to explore what is the revised estimate for the current financial year and what would be the next budget estimates. Pre-budget consultations are being done with various stakeholders uh, in the month of October to December. And in a recent past, various civil society organizations are also been invited in order to look into the budgetary aspects of uh, various social segments. But if you see, most majority of the budget consultations are done with uh, big industrialists, uh, financial chambers, and other such bodies. Also, there is a huge lobby of agriculturists, rich farmers. They also do sort of things. And there are various actors also involved in these consultations, which we'll see in a later part of these presentations. uh, and also, finance department start the for resource forecasting during this period, that what will be the collections, revenue collections, and so on and so forth. Recently, you all know that GST new sort of uh, taxation scheme has been started, and uh, whatever been suggested in the budget estimates, so far government couldn't meet that sort of uh, revenue collection. And also we see uh, the sort of conflict uh, when it comes to the sharing of states within those resources. Many you might have seen, you might have come across recent paper clippings and so on, that states are not being given their due share, where GST they have DST due shares. And you might be knowing that Baba Sahib presented a dissertation in Columbia University, uh, particularly on the state and central relationship, financial relationship. So it's very important to understand these budgetary documents and to know what aspects are being transferred to states or United Union territories, and how that state is utilizing for various sections of the society. In the month of, hello, I guess the control is gone again. The previous slides.
Uh, no, it's I think uh,
Yeah,
yes. Are you able to manage?
yeah.
Okay.
So by mid-December, finalization of ceilings of expenditures took place, and sort of third issue of circular calling for supplementary demands is being issued in the month of January. Communication is being held with other ministries and department, and this collection of receipt of budget estimates from various ministries are done at a finance department level, finance ministry level, and all sort of closing of expenditure statements is been done in the month of January, and the budget goes to printing. And in the media, you might see a finance minister sort of preparing halwa in a basement of a finance department, and that halwa is being distributed, which indicates that budget printing is being done. And in the first of February, in the parliament, the budget is being presented. Prior to the budget presentation, there is a sort of president's speech, which usually focused on the priorities of the government. So, when look at the budget statement, it's not basically the income and expenditure or the receipt and expenditure. It's also the political uh, parties, those who are of power, their priorities, how they are going to prioritize what they have said in their manifestos. So if their political parties uh, priority is mandir wahi banayenge, then how much allocation is going to be there for such programs through center or through states, that we can very much come to know by going through those budget documents. And when the bill is enactment, the sending of bill is to the various department, line department, notifications are being issued, and the sort of uh, consideration of passing of bill is considered in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So this is usually the timeline which starts by end of August and go up to the month of uh, March, where the bill is being passed and the transfer is being done to line department. As I said, there are various actors also who influence the budget. Particularly, those can be categorized into sort of constitutional actors and non-constitutional actors. So the constitutional actors are like executives uh, who are directly related with respect to budget, member of parliaments, parliamentary committees of the parliament, financial commissions, and there are other non-constitutional actors. Uh, it may be government-funded research institutions, uh, central bank, government actors, non-governmental actors like, as I said, FICCI, media, civil society organizations are also invited for such consultations, and their research and their papers which adhere to some policies or programs are also being considered. Uh, so, so coming back to this annual financial statement, uh, article according to Article 112 and Article 113. Uh, as I said, this has been categorized into three government accounts: consolidated fund. The consolidated fund under Article 266 one is usually known as budget. So we'll stick our discussion today only to consolidated funds, and due course of time, we will also explore this contingency fund and public fund. Uh, this consolidated fund is further divided into sort of revenue account and capital account. So in revenue account, it's further classified as revenue expenditure. The expenditure which does not create any assets or reduce liabilities is treated as revenue expenditure. Revenue receipts are those which proceed from taxes and non-taxes sources of revenue, and other receipts are recorded as revenue receipt. We won't go into detail today on taxes, like what are the direct taxes or what are indirect taxes, but later, as I said, we will explore when we uh, more see into the state budget structure and sort of other tiers of the government. Like as I said earlier, we government of India operates in a three tier, like union level, state level, and local level. Where in local level there are urban bodies like municipal corporations, municipal councils, and so on. So the entire budget of these all three tiers is known as government, uh, which constitute government budget of India. But we will today look into this union budget and particularly see into these consolidated funds. So there is revenue account and capital account. So revenue account is further divided into revenue expenditure and revenue receipt, and capital account is further divided into capital expenditure and capital receipt. Capital expenditure is those expenditure which incurred for the purpose of creation of assets or reduction of liabilities, like and reduction capital receipts are reduction in the assets or the increase in the liabilities of the government. We'll we'll see more into these terms when we try to read the budget documents. So in general, if you look into this figure, uh, the union budget and the state budget structure is more or less similar. Uh, though some changes are there, but the structure is more or less similar. So the consolidated fund of the state is again sort of divided into revenue budget and capital budget. Revenue budget is further revenue receipt and revenue expenditure. Capital budget is further capital receipts and uh, sort of capital disbursement. Revenue receipts, it's like tax revenue, non-tax revenue, grants from union government. So the structure is more or less similar to union budget. We'll explore state budget further in next sessions, where we'll try to understand state budget with an example of one particular state. And along with those sessions, we will also try to look into the state budgets of various states. So I won't go further detail into it. Uh, the another aspects which we need to know are like, what are the budget documents? I know this is the quite a list, and we can't go through the list today itself. But some major aspects you can understand by the name itself. Like there is one important document. Earlier, these all budget documents used to come along with finance minister in a briefcase, but nowadays it comes in a pothi. So what lies in that pothi is the budget speech and the finance bill, right? Or the documents like budget at a glance. So there is one uh, important document which is the which is named as key to budget documents, and it explains the various terms which are being used in the budgetary papers or the budget speech. So it is very essential to go through these budget documents. And as I said, the president speech is also important because we can find out the trajectories and contours of uh, the political party who is in power, that how the direction of the budget will be, or what are the priorities of the government in this particular financial year. So that can be also looked into from by understanding the president's speech. The another important document is like budget highlights, where major thrust is being given to the various schemes and, as I said, the important elements of the government priorities. And then, of course, is the budget speech, which is usually divided into two parts, where firstly expenditure and later on receipts part is being discussed and presented in the parliament. Uh, Now there is one major difference. You all know, you all uh, sort of prepare your own budget, whether it be at home, whether it be at workplace, and so on. There is a major difference while preparing the government budget and budget at household level. If you are a family of 5 members, where your parents are there, husband couple is there, and a kid is there, uh, then you have to prioritize what will go for the medical expenditure of your parents. If your parents are suffering with some sort of diseases and so on, if your kid is going to the schools, you have to prioritize how much tuition fee will be incurred, and so on and so forth. If you are taken some loan, what will be sort of EMI for those things. So it all determines on what income you are having, what is the income of your household, that determines how you will go for expenditure and so on. But the major difference with the government budget is it prepares the expenditure according to the agreement which we all have agreed to from 26 January 1950. And that agreement says that we are going to envisage, or we are going to make our democracy social, economic, and political democracy, where we are going to deliver economic justice, where we are going to deliver the opportunities for all sections of the society. And in order to carry out, or in order to provide opportunities to all sections of the society, government need to provide those expenditures in various categories like economic services, social sector services, and so on and so forth. It needs to cater to the expenditure of education. It needs to cater to the expenditure of health. It needs to cater to the expenditure of housing and so on. So their government can't say that our revenue is less and therefore we won't give scholarship to the people this year. We are reducing the funding of education this year, which is nowadays we are facing, which is nowadays we are saying that a government is saying, because of so and so forth, there is a development sector cut, and therefore the there is a cut in the expenditure of special component plan budget or tribal subplan budget and so on and so forth. So, but what we have agreed and what our constitution says, that government needs to cater to various subjects of the people, which we will discuss in further sessions when we look into the budget in from various angles. So these are some of the key budget documents which we need to go through. Today we will look into sort of two or three aspects which will try to explain the brief, and so that it will help us to move forward in understanding the budget. All these documents are available if you go to the website indiabudget.gov.in. After the presentation of budget, all those budgetary documents are given to the member of parliament in briefcase. Uh, but you can also access those budgetary documents from this website. And on this website, those budgets in the PDF format as well as in Excel sheets, they are being uploaded along with budget speech and the key aspect of it. As I said, key to budget document is one of the important document to understand the terms and words which are being used in the budget. Uh, so this can be accessed. And then one of the important budget document is demand for grants. Article 113 of the Constitution mandates that the estimate expenditure from the Consulate Fund of India included in the annual financial statement according to Article 112 are required to be voted by the Lok Sabha and to be submitted in the forms of demand of grants. So each ministry is sort of presenting those demands, and if one of the ministry or department is holding various functions, then number of demands are being presented. For example, if agriculture department, uh, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer is holding two various different functions. As you can see from the slide, uh, that Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare is holding two functions like Department of Agriculture Cooperation and Farmers Welfare and Department of Agriculture Research and Education. So they will present two demands. So that will be numbered like number of demand is 1, and for demand Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare, and number of demand will be 2 for Department of Agriculture Research and Education. So likewise, for all those ministries or department, there will be number of demand, and it will be particularly for the service or administration or the area which uh, the demand relates. Uh, so as there will be sort of and these demands for grants are usually presented uh, in a 3 columns, like actuals, revised estimate for the financial year, current financial year, and the budget estimate for coming financial year. So when we look at the demands or the paper of demand for grants, usually it has been into 4 column, like what is the actual expenditure for previous uh, financial year, what is the budget, what was the budget estimate, and what is the revised estimate for current financial year, and what will be the budget estimate for forthcoming financial year. So this way those the sort of programs schemes are being presented into this demand for grants. There's also the budget can be classified into other categories. Earlier, prior to 2017, it used to be classified into like plan and non-plan. But uh, now with the merger, those classifications are not there. But there you can see two classifications again, like charge and been voted. So the voted is the things which are being discussed and debated in the parliament, where where this demand for grants are presented, that this demand can for grants can be refused. This can demand for grants can be reduced, but cannot increased. So those things which are discussed or debated are known as voted, and those things which are not debated or discussed in the parliament are like uh, sort of salaries of president or salaries of Lok Sabha speaker. Those things are called charge. In budget 2021, there are around 101 demands for grants. Now each demand, uh, as I said, are classified uh, into voted and charge expenditure, revenue and capital expenditure, the grand total on a gross basis of amount of expenditure for which demand is presented. This is again followed by sort of major head of accounts. We will uh, give little time on understanding these major heads of accounts, so that it will help us to understand what are various schemes and programs, how they are clubbed together when we try to understand the budgets from specific lanes. So this basically major demands, major heads are a 4-digit code which has been allocated to specific services delivered by the government. For example, 2225, it is social service expenditure, or 0401, it's a revenue receipt. So if it is 0 or 1, it is revenue receipt. If it is 2 or 3, it's revenue expenditure. If it is 4 or 5, it's a capital expenditure, sort capital accounts and capital expenditure. If it is 6 or 7, it's loans and so on and so forth. So for example, if we want to know what are the expenditure for the housing, then if you look for a code 20 to 16, then you can understand what are the expenditure incurred by the government on housing. So likewise, these major heads determined can help us to understand the expenditures of specific service delivered by the government. Uh, and then there is a expenditure budget. Uh, these expenditure budget are, if you go to the side, you will look into the 3 categories like expenditure profile and so on and so forth. These expenditure budget are the estimates for the schemes and program which are brought together as expenses. So expenditure of individual ministries, departments are further classified into 2 broad categories like central expenditure and transfer to states or union territories. This central expenditure is further classified into 3 sub-classification, which talks about expenditure establishment of central sector schemes, and other central expenditure, including central public sector enterprises and various other autonomous bodies. And the transfer to the budget sort of states, transfer to states or United States, are further being classified as centrally sponsored schemes and finance commissions transferred, or other states, uh, other transfer to states. So these are basically a sort of 2 major things which we need to understand in order to enter into sort of understand the numbers, figures which are there, uh, and which help us to understand what are the grants in aids for various programs under UGC, what are the support schemes, what are the scholarship scheme. So by understanding these major codes and minor codes, uh, we will able to understand what sort of allocation is being done for special component plan. For example, 789 is a minor code for special component plan, or 796 is a minor code for tribal subplan. So these are sort of how the codes are being used, or if the programs or schemes are written prior to those programs and schemes, it has been suffixed by such codes. So there is a major code, there is a minor code, which will help you understand where that allocation is being made. And if you need to find out the total deliverable service by the government, by clubbing all this together, we will come to know about that. So uh, in nutshell, this demand for grants of various ministries or department, and this expenditure statement of various departments are important document in order to understand how uh, or where the funds are going, how the funds are going to, how much allocation is there for the line department, how further that line department is classifying those programs into various schemes and expenses, whether it is capital expenses or revenue expenses. If it is revenue expenses, what sort of schemes are being covered under that, so on and so forth, can be understood, easily been understood by understanding these two documents. And these are, uh, I guess, uh, important document as far as when I started engaging on this subject. These two documents I find very useful in order to understand particularly the budgets of marginalized, budgets of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and also to look into the particular statements. So if you go to the expenditure profile on the ministry website, which we have seen earlier, in that expenditure profile, there is a statement A and statement B, which is, if you go on this website, indiabudget.gov.in, and then into the expenditure budget, you will get a expenditure profile. And in expenditure profile, you can see a statement 10A for scheduled caste umbrella schemes for the welfare of scheduled caste, and 10B, the umbrella schemes for the welfare of scheduled tribes, uh, which we will tomorrow see in detail how to read those statements, how to understand those statements, and what is the policy behind all those schemes and programs. So at present, we'll stop now, and if there are any questions, I would like to take those questions.
Priyadarshi sir, thank you so much for this presentation. This matter is not easy matter. It's very difficult to understand the budget, and it's very there is, it's filled with the technical terms. For ourselves, and I will request the young audiences to really go into this again and again, so that they have this completely clear in their minds, because these tools are so essential for the community to realize its legitimate share in the government budget. And we know that a lot of money is just squandered, which is meant to go for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. I think the topic that we are going to go in the course of the 2 days presentation. But here is a question, Priyadarshi sir, is uh, why, like this budget, what is the difference between the pre NDA budget and the post NDA budget? Like, is there any technical change in that?
Uh, Post 2017, after, uh, if you remember, in 2015, Prime Minister declared that there won't be a planning commission. And after the end of 12-5-year plan, uh, the classification of plan and non-plan budget has come to an end. Earlier, Planning Commission used to play a role uh, in formulation of budget in order to understand a sort of the allocations to various sort of plan expenditure, or it was the role played by the Planning Commission was major. But with the conversion or sort of uh, Niti Aayog, that role is now not being played by Niti Aayog, but certainly Niti Aayog is intervening into the budget and all. But the Planning Commission used to play a major role, and tomorrow we are going to discuss it in detail how it has affected the special component plan and tribal sub plan, because earlier the allocation in uh, sort of sub plan used to be from plan budget. Now with the absence of plan budget, how it has been transferred post 2017, that we will discuss further in tomorrow in detail. But certainly there are changes as far as uh, role of Planning Commission is concerned prior to 2017 and post 2017.
Sir, there is a question. Is there what was the railway budget, and are there different types of budgets? Like, is there a defense budget, different defense budget, or how is it?
Yes, earlier there used to be separate railway budget, but now it's been merged. So there is not a separate presentation of railway budget. Defense budget, we do have a defense budget. Pensions of those defense budget are not being considered under defense budget, but it is considered in pensions separately. In a due course of time, we will explore that sort of thing. That because again there is a many not much transparency is there when it comes to the expenses like CGS, CGHS in defense budget and so on. CGHS is one of the important services as far as healthcare is concerned, and they are one of the good institutes. But we don't know what sort of expenditure is being incurred within defense budget in CGSS and so on. It needs a separate session to go into the exploration of defense budget in totality. But yes, more if you see the allocation of defense budget, uh, it has not been less as compared to other sections. When we try to compare with the social sector budgets, defense budget is always allocated uh, majorly.
Right, right. There is one question for you, Priyadarshi sir. The question is, where does PM Care Fund
That's interesting question.
included,
I,
and whether it's in the consolidated or contingency funds or in the public account? So that's a question for you. Recently, the Prime Minister has set up some extra constitutional fund, and there is a lot of controversy over it. So where does it stand vis-a-vis the three categories of the budgets,
it doesn't
three categories of the accounts that you have spelled?
it doesn't come under any of the category of the uh, fund. And if you see the budget life cycle, there is another important section after the implementation, that is audit. And most of the audit is done by the controller auditor general or the institute size, right? So PM Care Fund is not in the ambit of CAG. It is to be done by the private auditors. So you know what, if you are appointing some of the private auditors, you will certainly have a report the way you want it. So there won't be any transparency or accountability as far as PM Care funds are concerned.
So this goes against the spirit of what Babasaheb Ambedkar has talked about the CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, as one of the most important offices, and it has given the constitutional status.
Right.
Even the Planning Commission didn't have the constitutional status, but the CAG has a constitutional status. So looking at the present scheme, the way the government is functioning, opening the extra constitutional funds, raising it, do you think that it goes against the grain of the constitution, like office of the CAG, or the accountability itself to the people?
Yes, as far as constitutional mandates, uh, any amount, any amount or any receipts which has been collected as a tax needs to be discussed and debated in the Lok Sabha. Any amount which is been spent on programs or any other expenditure need to be voted in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha particularly. But with respect to this PM Care Fund, it's very opaque. It doesn't provide sort of accountability and transparency, and it goes against the ethos and spirits of the Constitution or the articles which are related to the finance of our country.
So, Priyadesh sir, this is perhaps the last question today. Like as you referred to Baba Saheb Ambedkar's book on his research work on how the funds should be shared between the British provinces and then the central government, and he has particularly tried to maintain that balance of federalism in our country, where the states will be given money according to a certain formula. And now with this GST problem that the union government is not releasing the due share of the state, do you think that our federalism, which is a very important part of our constitution, is in danger because this financial, what we can say,
The
the
relationship between,
yeah.
yeah. Certainly it's a strained relationship, and if you go through the figures of GST collection in last financial year, at the end of January 2020, it was expected that there should be a collection of 23 lakh crore from GST and so on, or something like 19 lakh crore from GST and so on, which was usually divided into like 1 lakh, more than 1 lakh crore per month. But if you see in the last financial year, apart from the month of November, which was Diwali, and in the month of January, the collection was not more than 1 lakh. So, so there was certainly sort of strain on the revenue side, receipt sides for the government, and the states like Maharashtra who contributed more, whose contribution in GST is more, those states not even given the due share, even what has been mandated. We don't know uh, what are the recommendations of 15 finance commissions. It will certainly come in discussion after lockdown and so on. But yes, in southern states, most of the political leaders are making argument that why they should feel the burden of other Bimaru states, and why those union government is charging them more sort of things. And therefore, at some extent, there was also uh, trends in the Twitter of saying United States of South India.
Uh,
So certainly it's a major uh, problem with respect to states and a union relationship as far as resource sharing is concerned. And even in this sort of new tax regime of GST, as I said, as I given the example of Maharashtra, who shared major revenue, their due collection is not been given. And in the emergency situation like COVID, the grants which needs to be provided by the central government, uh, not according to the GST receipts, but also looking at the hotspots and conditions, is not being uh, 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 sort of considered by the Prime Minister. Though from the very beginning, the Prime Minister of India is talking about cooperative federalism, but there is much of cooperative federalism in his talk, but not in practice. So I mean, from yesterday, if we take a cue from yesterday's discussions of Dr. Nitish, constitutional those people who are in constitutional post are certainly talking about constitutional morality, but they are not practicing what they are preaching. And it is same about the cooperative federalism, which has been much talked about, but not in practice.
So Priyadarshi sir, thank you so much for today's presentation. We are going to listen to you tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And as we move on, a lot of things will be clear to the audiences. Dear audiences, this series is a part of understanding our basic economic rights and the budgets which are allocated to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. If they were given their due share, legitimate share after the 6 5-year plan, we would have solved a lot of our problems. The money of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes is looted to an extent that even if they would have, the government would have distributed just the cash to the people, it would have been more than the actual schemes. So we are going to look into this very interesting aspect of the budget from the point of view of economic justice, from the point of view of advocacy, and from the point of view of how to realize the economic empowerment and economic democracy in this country, which is the mandate of our constitution. So thank you for being there, and we hope to see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, for the more details about the budget rights, the advocacy, and understanding the depth of the budgetary process itself. Thank you so much, Priyadarshi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mangesh.